'Tis I, your old pal King Chuck. I hope you had a wonderful Super Bowl. And of course, I hope you all voted, did a good job of voting for Seattle. Because, as we all know, the Seahawks won the Super Bowl. That's right, they won the Super Bowl. So they have bragging rights. That's right. Good for them. I was really pulling for them. Even though it was a slow game in the beginning. But then finally, the offense on both teams started to shine. And, you know, it was a really defensive game in the beginning. So, anyway, the rest of the story is that, you know, it was a decent Super Bowl. I was happy that my team won. I was, you know, the Super Bowl ads, some were pretty good. One commercial I loved was for a trimmer. It actually aired before the game, but it was hilarious because it had all these piles of room, you know, cut hair, and one almost said the word balls before he was swept away. Yeah, I love that. Another commercial that aired was for Raisin Bran, featuring William Shatner, although they shortened his name to William Shat. They dropped the ner from his name because they did a gag where William was on top of the building, and they were like, "Oh, William shat on top of the building," because shat, of course, is past tense of shit. Get it? And of course, anyway, yeah, I think the gag actually started years ago on The Daily Show with Craig Kilborn. Remember Craig Kilborn? Yeah. Yeah, you know, he hosted The Daily Show, and then he hosted The Late Late Show on CBS for a couple of years. And, yeah, he quit show business for some reason. So, anyway, yeah, he did the, there used to be a segment on The Daily Show where a celebrity would come on and they'd ask a few questions, and the question was, what is the past tense of the word shit? And William Shatner was the guest, and he said, oh, I don't know, shat. Yeah, so, nice play on words. A lot of people were saying that the one with Ben Stiller as a 80s rock star was a good one. State Farm, Halfway There Insurance, featuring John Bon Jovi, you know, because the insurance is, you know, Halfway There Insurance, because you'll be living out of prayer. Yeah, that was a good one. I'll say that. The worst commercials, yeah, I agree, were all the Trump-related ones. Especially the one with the Trump accounts commercial, and another one where Mike Tyson was encouraging people to eat whole foods as opposed to processed foods, and the ad ended with paid for by Make America Healthy Again, MAHA, which of course is, you know, RFK Jr. It's like, and of course there was another ad for AI.com, and it mentioned Elon, and I'm like, uh-oh, that's not cool. So, I don't know, folks. I hope we don't have to be forced to register on AI.com and get your name now, and I don't get it, you know. Anyway, so that's a little rundown of the commercials from last night. Oh yeah, the one with Budweiser. A lot of people were talking about that one because it was kind of a cute ad. It featured a one of the Clydesdales, Raisin and Eagle, and the Eagle grew up to be, grew up from a weird chick to a grown-up eagle, and it was set to Free Bird, and yeah, it was a decent ad. The only thing I hated about that commercial was the fact that it was that ad kind of reminded me of my late stepdad. And I was thinking to myself, this ad could have been a good tribute to him in a way. Because, my stepdad loved Leonard Skinner. And of course, there were these ads. One was for T-Mobile that featured the Backstreet Boys, and there was another commercial that had the Backstreet Boys in it as well, and it was a crypto ad, and I'm like, okay, enough with the shitty music already. Yeah, pop music of the late 90s was pure shit. It was like, I hated the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney Spears, and it's like, go the fuck away already. Ay vey. Yeah, try not to remind me too much of my horrible childhood. So anyway, obviously, last night was the big halftime show with the Bad Bunny. And Bad Bunny, a lot of people on the right absolutely hate him due to the fact that he's, they cry that, oh, he doesn't like America. Oh, he's not touring in this country because he doesn't want ICE to invade all the stadiums that he's going to play in. And so his only American appearance is at, in San Francisco in front of a bunch of very wealthy people who paid big time dollars to see the game. And, the sad truth is, the right made a really bad deal of this. And, so this is what happened. Turning Point USA, what they did. They decided, okay, we're going to go ahead and put our own halftime show as an alternative to the regular halftime show. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell people that this is how a halftime show is supposed to be done. And so, anyway, I told you the story last week. Turning Point USA, they teamed up with all these little networks, these fringe right-wing networks like TBN, and I told you the story with TBN and their horrible story about their the founders 13-year-old granddaughter being raped and sweeping it under the rug pretty much. And and two of the networks, of course, are owned by Sinclair. Of course, Sinclair made headlines last year when they told Jimmy Kimmel, we're not going to carry your show unless you give to Turning Point USA. They basically held him hostage, but of course, they were forced to recant their statement because ABC gave them that big slap on the wrist for, trying to cancel Jimmy Kimmel. Anyway, so the rest of the story is that they put on their stupid halftime show last night, and they put it on at the same time, the regular halftime show was on. And it featured 3 country music stars and Kid Rock. And, so let me tell you the story. My father lives with me. And the reason why he lives with me is because he, his second marriage failed. And I could not find a girl to live my life with me. And, the sad truth is Grand Rapids is a shithole when it comes to women. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. And it's like, you know, it's like this is a town that's, designed for certain guys to fail at relationships. So anyway, the rest of the story was that, so my dad figured, it was actually my aunt, my dad's youngest sister, who decided this, that we should live together. And that's what happened. We bought a house together, and, he bought the house, I paid the mortgage, and, he does help out me out financially if I'm, because I do the finances and everything. So the story is, with my dad, is that tragically, he shoves his mega bullshit in my face. And while we were watching the Super Bowl yesterday, and when it was halftime, he told me, go find the Kid Rock halftime show. And I was reluctant. And then he got really angry. It's like, okay, this is what I'll do. You can watch your little shit show while I watch the real halftime show on my phone. And guess what? That's one of the great things about me having glasses that have little earbuds in it, so I can actually listen. So you don't have to listen to it. So this is what I did. I watched my, the Bad Bunny show, and it was awesome. I'll tell you this, folks. I don't understand a fucking word he says. Okay, I do not speak Spanish. But I thought it was tasteful. I thought it was well choreographed. They had, he had a bunch of female dancers. They were really cute and shaking their ass in front of the camera. There was a couple that got married during the halftime show. There was a little boy that got, he gave one of his Grammys to. This guy has done so much for his people. And then there was the Hillbilly Fest. America. And, the first country star that came out, he had a bunch of old guys with gray hair, long gray hair. And I'm like, I'm not watching this shit. And the more I thought about the Turning Point USA Festival, I was thinking to myself, if Johnny Rebel was still alive, they would welcome him with open arms. That's how bad it was. And for those who don't know who Johnny Rebel was, he was that guy. Howard Stern used to play his music all the time. It's like, if he was really ragging on a country music star, he would play Johnny Rebel music. And it made me laugh my ass off, because that's what country music is. It's stupid, racist bullshit. Or as I like to call it, stupid music for stupid people. And, this Johnny Rebel guy, he was even a guest on Stern. And he said the only, in real life, he's not racist. He wasn't racist, he's passed away. But the only reason why he recorded that music was because that's how he got paid. What happened. Yeah, I read the story. The story was Clifford Trahan was his real name. He moved to Nashville when he was right out of high school. He wanted, the story was when he was a kid, his parents divorced, and he played guitar a lot. He was really hoping to hit it big into the country music business. But he got rejected, he couldn't make it. So he moved back to Louisiana. He worked on a shipping dock. And then what happened was, it turns out his cousin owned a record label, or at least he was starting one. And it was all focused on music for segregationists. So he was told to record under the name Johnny Rebel. And that's how his career started. And, this guy recorded some of the most hate-filled recordings known to mankind. Songs with titles like N-word hating me, some N-words never die, they smell that way, move them N-words north. It just goes on and on. But anyway, that's a huge reason why I hate country music. It's like The people who make country music are just the dumbest, most idiot, and the people who love country music. I've noticed that a lot of people who love country music just aren't intelligent. It's like I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's stupid music for stupid people. And, my father, his problem is he never finished high school. He had a really crappy job for years, driving a school bus. And, my parents had to live very cheaply because of, he made the foolish decision before I was born to move up north where there were no jobs. And he had to make do with what he had. And ditto with my mom. This is why both my parents don't live up there anymore. It's because there's no jobs. None. But now, it's like the good news is I moved to Grand Rapids. Tragically, I got stuck working for a man who didn't give me a raise for over 10 years. Nobody liked the guy. He damn near ran our company into the ground. And by the time he retired, I was paying off 3 credit card bills a month. And, I knew I was going to be stuck living in that shithole apartment for years and years. And tragically, I was really hoping for a woman out there who would like me for me, but couldn't find one. And that's why my dad is with me. I had to start my future with my dad and not with a woman, and sometimes life is like that. But now I have to deal with his politics and his, the fact that he thinks that Fox News Channel, everything that's said on that channel is gospel. And meanwhile, I listen to intelligent sources like Midas Touch and others who actually speak the truth. And the truth is that halftime show was shit. And I was so proud. It's like if I had to choose between Bad Bunny or shitty ass white trash country music, Bad Bunny would win in a landslide because his music is fun and in fact, it's infectious. It's in Spanish, but it was well put together. They put their hearts and souls into it. And then came, so this is what happened. Kid Rock didn't even come out until, Bad Bunny ended his halftime show. That, the Turning Point USA halftime show was much longer than, the Bad Bunny show. So this is what happens. After Bad Bunny ended and the Super Bowl was back to starting again, Kid Rock finally comes out. 4 black dudes introduce him. Of course, one of them does the talking. And he's like, ladies and gentlemen, our homeboy, Kid Rock. Kid Rock comes out. He performs Ba Witta Ba, one of his earliest hits. And you could clearly tell he was lip syncing. Why? It was because he could not keep up with the recording. And it's like, oh my God, what a motherfucking disaster. I mean, I understand he's 54 years old, and it's like, it's what an abortion. And of course, this halftime show, by the way, I should describe the stage. The stage was bigger than the amount of people in the building. Yeah, it looked like there was only like a few dozen people in there. So anyway, but I also heard a rumor that there could have been, the people were generated by AI. So anyway, Kid Rock only does a portion of Ba Witta Ba. And then anyway, the song ends, and they cut to a man and a woman, one playing the cello, the other playing the violin. They do that for a few seconds. And then they cut back to the same 4 black dudes again. And they are like, ladies and gentlemen, our homeboy, Robert Ritchie. Robert Ritchie, of course, is the real name of Kid Rock. So he does this really slow, depressing country song. And that's when I turned the game back up again. Of course, the game was back on. And then, anyway, when Kid Rock started to speak, I turned the phone down. And he was saying something. I don't remember what it was. But then the last verse of the song, he was saying, there's a book out there. It's in your house. It's got a lot of dust on it. You should be out there reading it about Jesus and blah, blah, blah. You can just tell this asshole is such a sellout. I'm sorry. And I know there's some people out there who are like, shame on you for I'm not trashing Jesus, okay? I'm trashing the idea, how so many people out there, they're hating on Bad Bunny, all because the fact that, it's all because of the fact that he's Hispanic. That's all it is. And, it's like, it pisses me off when people are like, white people are losing their privilege. Okay, I got news for you, folks. Yesterday, I was reading some of the criticisms regarding Bad Bunny. And one of them was from a guy who was crying that, years ago in Living Color had a halftime show. That's right, the show on Fox, that featured the Wayans family and Jim Carrey and all these other folks. And they did it because they didn't like the halftime show, so they did their own alternative halftime show. They wanted to give the NFL a message. Your halftime shows suck. And, and what this guy said was the people who do who are doing the Bad Bunny show, they're bigots. They're doing this because, they don't like the idea of a white man doing a halftime show. Okay, look, man. One of the greatest human beings who ever walked the earth, in my opinion, was Don Cornelius, the man who created Soul Train. Don Cornelius, in 1966, Don Cornelius was 30 years old. He had a wife and, I think, 2 sons. And what happened was he was working in insurance. And Don made $250 a week. And in 1960s money, it was great money. And then Don got tired. He got tired. So he enrolled in a radio broadcasting school. He ended up so this is what happened. He went into broadcasting school. He was told by his instructor, most of you will never be successful. Don ignored that advice. And within a few weeks, Don went from making $250 a week working for the insurance, a life insurance company, to $50 a week working at a 250 watt station in Chicago called WVON. So Don made extra money working at a television station, WCIU, Channel 26, and he hosted several shows on the station. One of them was a Black's View of the News, which, it was what it was. It was a Black's View of the headlines. He also, so this is what happened. Don was angry that the big show of the day for for teenagers was not Soul Train, was American Bandstand. And he felt that Bandstand was not doing enough for black people. The Bandstand story was that Dick Clark, it was like the show, here's the story. By the late 1960s, Bandstand's ratings were bad. And part of the reason why was because, Dick Clark was very, he was acting very conservatively. He didn't want to have a lot of, he wanted to play more pop music on the show and less, of the Woodstock stuff and the psychedelic stuff as well. So what he did was, his show was a little bit conservative. So anyway, the rest of the story was that for years, one of the biggest problems with Bandstand was that Dick would have blacks dance on one section of the stage and whites dance on another. And blacks couldn't dance with whites and vice versa. So this is what Don did. Don started what some people would call a Black American Bandstand, even though Don hated the title. And he named it after a promotion that WVON Radio was holding called The Soul Train. And in 1970, Soul Train debuted on WCIU Channel 26, and it became a ratings smash in Chicago. And the local sponsors, which included Sears, Roebuck and Company and the Johnson Products Company, which made Afro Sheen, told Don, take the show national. And he did. He filmed a pilot in Los Angeles. He shipped it out to a few TV stations. And, get this, by 1973, Don was a multimillionaire. He took a giant risk and won. But guess who got pissed off at him? Dick Clark. So what does Dick do? He starts his own show. It was called Soul Unlimited. He hired a guy named Buster Jones, a black dude, to host the show. The big difference between, the show did have some differences. One of the big ones was Soul Unlimited was on the ABC network. And they alternated weekly with Bandstand for a couple of months. So this is what happened. Don Cornelius, along with a group of black leaders, including Reverend Jesse Jackson, they came to Dick Clark and said, knock it off right now. And he did. Don Cornelius was a self-made man. He busted his ass to get Soul Train on the air. While Dick Clark, surprise, surprise, the show was basically put on his lap. Let me tell you the story about how Dick Clark got the job of hosting American Bandstand. So the story was, Bandstand was originally hosted by a guy named Bob Horn. Bob Horn hosted the show from its beginning in 1952 until 56. And then Horn was fired. Why was he fired? Because he got busted for drunk driving. Oh, can't do that for a teen, regarding a teen show. So the story was, station executives, of course, WFIL was the creator of Bandstand, the television station in Philadelphia. There was a WFIL radio. And WFIL radio had Dick Clark as one of their personalities. And they were like, hey, you want to host Bandstand? And Dick Clark was like, sure, why not? And Clark got the show. He was in his 20s. He was young. He was debonair. And when ABC saw the show, They loved him. They thought that he was a good personality. It was a good show for teens. When they came from school, it became a smash hit. But, Don Cornelius, on the other hand, he took risks to get, Soul Train on the air. And that's why Cornelius got pissed off when Dick Clark stole his idea and created a black dance show for national TV. And that's what happened. And I don't want to hear, well, Don Cornelius is a racist. He put up the show on the air because he hates black people, white people. He doesn't. So how come he put on people like David Bowie and Elton John and and sometimes there were white people who danced on the show. The point is, and not only that, he was actually married to a white woman. It was true. He was actually married to his last wife was a white woman before he died. Yeah, unfortunately, he beat her up. Yeah, well, but then again, he was battling dementia too. Yeah, he knew he was on his last legs, unfortunately. So the reality is, say what you want. The point is, I don't like it when people say, well, this person's a bigot because they want what it's all about. It's like, it's white supremacy, plain and simple. And I understand the Super Bowl hasn't had a country star do the halftime show in years. It's because, let me tell you why. It's because I grew up hating country music. When I was a kid, country music sucked. Country music was the music of stupid people. I mean, I lived in northern Michigan. Country was everywhere. I was a big hard rock and heavy metal guy. And all the radio stations up north, they wanted to do country. Because because the number one station in town, WTCM, country. So we ended up with the B94.3 and 92.5. And, of course, up in St. Ignace, there was big, it was originally KC Country, but then it became Big Country 102.9. And of course, there was Sunny Country 101.9. And they. And I'm like, something, man, where's my rock? This is bullshit. Oh, hard rock won't do well in northern Michigan. Well, then how come when the Zone started playing new metal 25 odd years ago, they were kicking KLT's ass? In KLT, they were like, oh, we need to play only stuff, the Eagles and Styx and Foreigner, all the bands that I grew up hating. Folks, you see, folks, this is why I hate country with a passion. And it's like I hate it when people try, like my dad, try to shove me in front of country music. I was so happy that I found a way to avoid most of the TPUSA halftime show from hell. He could enjoy, it's like, I love my dad, but I hate his politics. And I hate the way he acts sometimes, especially around, the fact that, he gets a lot of information from not only Fox News, but also from like TikTok. And I tried to tell him, it's, the shit you're watching is AI. And it's probably from Russia. These people are out there to lie at you to make sure that we, the American people, don't get nice things. And we're not. And we're tired. And here's another thing that I read online. So apparently about 5 million people watched the TP USA halftime show. But there were more people who watched like the Puppy Bowl. Yeah, the good old Puppy Bowl. Who doesn't like that? And then there's I remember the Lingerie Bowl. Whatever happened to that? All the hot girls dressed up in lingerie, playing football. That was so cool. Man, I miss. It's like, come on. But you know something, man? I understand. If you don't like something, you change the channel. And, you got 15 minutes to do it. And I know that, look, folks, Bad Bunny has more, there's a reason why they wanted him to do the halftime show. It's because he's got fans around the world. And I've said this once and I'll say it again. If you don't like Bad Bunny, change the channel. Don't download his music. Don't buy his albums. It's as simple as that. And I know, I would love to have more hard rock and metal. I mean, Green Day did a good. I thought they kicked ass in the beginning of the halftime show. Not the halftime show, but the actual Super Bowl. Yeah, they were the opening act. Even though everything they did was from American Idiot. It was a medley of the American Idiot stuff. And I think it was all lip synced and stuff like that. But, you got to take it as it is. So, anyway, you see, folks, I get angry at all these people, including my dad, unfortunately, who love Trump. And sometimes I like to tell these people, if you love Trump so much, then how come, his approval ratings are in the shitter? How come the prices of everything keep going up and up and up? How come, and hell, we've been reporting for the last couple of weeks about the Melania movie. Get this. This past weekend, Melania went from number 3 to number 10. It dropped like a rock. Even though 225 screens added the film. So far, it has not even grossed $14 million. I was predicting it, I think I was saying it would be lucky if it grossed 20 million. But it's only grossed 13. A little bit over 13 so far. And I'm like, Amazon, by the way, the publisher of the Washington Post announced that he's leaving the newspaper. Yeah, that it's a mess right now, folks. And it's going to continue to be a mess, because we keep allowing oligarchs to buy our media and lie to us and gaslight us. Because look at what it's led to now. Donald Trump as the president of the United States, and people with this terrible mindset that, if you're not Christian or white or conservative, you don't need to exist. But at the end of the day, we need to know, we need to tell you that good will always win. And I think, I am glad I watched while my dad was allowing these hillbillies to rot his brain on Sunday night. I did the right thing and watched the real halftime show online. And I know, maybe next year it will, they'll get a good rock band to do the halftime show. Of course, it probably won't happen as long as Apple produces the halftime show, like they've done in past years. You know? But here's the thing, folks. Midterms are coming up. We need, I'll keep saying this. I said it once, I'll say it again. The most progressive candidates need to be voted for, folks. Let's tell Donald Trump that his days are numbered. And we are telling him already. And I know he didn't like the halftime show. Why didn't he watch the Kid Rock show? Oh yeah, because he was at Mar-a-Lago. He was eating, hanging out with a bunch of his buddies, and they didn't have it on for some reason. I mean, dude, the dude owns the joint. It's like, that's what he should have done. Anyway. Yeah, I'll say, I just hope that people will finally get it. They'll finally get the fact that, that Puerto Rico is a part of America. And yes, they speak a totally different language than we do. But they deserve the best, and I'll tell you this, folks. I've worked with a lot of people in my life, and one of the nicest women I've ever worked with is from Puerto Rico. Very sweet, kind lady who unfortunately had to quit because, the job, this was back when our ex-boss was running the joint, and he fucked her over. And, basically she ended up having to quit. I just hope, folks, that, for in my life, things don't go back because of the mistakes that Trump is making. And even my dad, and I've tried to explain it to him, that he needed to walk a mile in my shoes, and he sure as hell wouldn't. Because that's the way he operates. And I know. And, I know. Trump won fair and square this time around. But it was only because people were misinformed. And he lied to get him back into the White House. And people like me and you lost in the long run. And the people who think that Trump is still doing a good job, well, they got their own Super Bowl halftime show. I hope they loved watching Kid Rock fumble hit the lyrics to Ba Witta Ba. A song that he's been performing for nearly 30 years. Yeah. Anyway, life goes on. The only thing I really truly hope about next year's halftime and next year's Super Bowl is our Lions will be in there. Yes. Only a few more months until until football season begins. Fingers crossed that the Lions will be in. All right, folks, I've been blabbing for a little bit, so I must be going. I'll talk to you later, folks. Good day, good luck. Have a good week, everybody.